Coach H, welcome to the basketball podcast.
Listen, Coach, I'm excited to be here. I watch your podcast. I follow all your content, get all your emails, and I love it. So it's an honor to be here with you today.
So I'm imagining you've been on social media since I have, going back 10 years or so, and we've known each other, but we didn't
Right.
really get a chance to hang out with each other at length until we both went to Paris with the NBA. That was an amazing experience. We align on so many things, and I'm so happy to be able to share with you and you share with me. And maybe just first frame it for everyone a little bit of your experience working with NBA basketball school.
Sure. I've been there now 7 months. I got there late August. And I didn't know what to expect at all. You have no idea what it is. When I first got the phone call, I said, "What's the NBA basketball school?" Because it's not something that's talked about a lot. So you get there, you're in a new country. Obviously, Dubai is 85% expats. So you have just so many different cultures. The diversity is pretty much like being in Los Angeles, where I'm from. And now, how do you just navigate through all of that from parents' expectations, kids' expectations, the curriculum the NBA puts in place? I inherited 12 amazing coaches, right? How do we do that? What does leadership and culture look like in another country, which I think is so important? I've been blessed to coach in 4 or 5 different countries. So I don't want to say like this American or West or Northern wherever we live is the way for basketball. It's more just like, how do you deal with the different people? So it's been amazing. Everyone is phenomenal. You get great experiences, but obviously when you get to work with a lot of players who want to learn, who want to get better, it just makes it so much better.
You've done it all in basketball, and I shared that in the bio a little bit from college to international to everywhere. And this is just a natural stepping stone for you to be able to do this. But one thing I know what it was too many kids in too small space with not enough hoops. And I think Americans romanticize, but anyone over in Europe and everyone over in Asia who are listening to this podcast, they are nodding their head going, yeah, the facilities aren't always perfect, are they? So you become a really adaptable coach. And that's what shone through watching you work there.
Yeah, the great thing is about it is that all the things that you have been doing for years really fits a learning kind of environment. And I think as society has moved on forward, we're looking for the perfect situation, right? We're the perfect spot, the perfect this. And we were in a place, especially in Paris, where we're just like, hey, this is what we have. What can we do to bring a great basketball experience? And you said it all the time, which I loved. You're like, hey guys, I'm just going to tell you this because all you guys want to do what? You want to play more basketball. So let's do these things to play more basketball. And the kids got better. They started to understand that mistakes are part of the game and it's okay. It's more than okay. It's encouraged so that you can get better.
You were great. I was grateful that you wrote a little blog on it for us. And we put it on Basketball Immersion, a week at NBA Basketball School Paris. If anyone wants to go read it, you can go read that and get coach's thoughts on it. Coming back to you a little bit, your coaching career spans across multiple levels, as I already referenced in country. So I'm curious, how has that diversity of experience shaped your coaching philosophy at this point?
I think when I started coaching, that wasn't what I had envisioned. I had envisioned, being in a place for a while, going. But when I first got into it, I got married young. My son was born already, and I'm trying to chase this dream. You end up learning how to, number one, look for opportunities where you could feed your family a little bit, because I was not in a situation where I couldn't do anything for free. I had to figure that out. And then also, how can you become adaptable and comfortable in uncomfortable situations? And then also just be useful. One thing I learned is it doesn't matter how much I knew. If I could get in by being a glorified rebounder and assist maker for any player, then that's how I'm going to get in. But I've coached high school, junior college, Division One, NA, almost every level I've been through. So you just learn that at the end of the day, basketball is basketball, people are people, and how can you work with people? And when I was younger, I would print out every play. I had 3 bins of horns, plays, and all this stuff because growing up, that's what you think coaching is. And it's not. And you start learning that it's about how can I help this person, this player, reach somewhere where they think they could be, but how can I give them the courage to do that? So it is totally shaped from how I coach to even how I parent to even how I speak to in my work in film, I work with leadership. Like, how do I speak with people? Because that, to me, at the end of the day, is the most important thing.
I want to come back to some of those things, but I want to start with a place because more often than not, my journey, your journey in coaching, it wasn't what we thought originally. but we're both happy and we're both grateful. And I know gratitude is such an important part of what you share. So can you talk about that a little bit as a superpower?
Yeah, gratitude. I mean, great segue. I wrote a journal, 30-day journal for athletes. You know, the gratitude is your superpower because I think in a day and age where everyone is comparing, they're seeing what I don't have, I should be here, I should be there. We lose the fact that just being grateful alone is what we can control. Because as coaches, we tell our players, control the controllables, right? And for some reason, some coaches forget that even in their own personal life. But if you're grateful for where you are today, and it sounds easy. I have a tendency, my therapist and my ex-wife tell me that I have a tendency to make everything sound so easy. But I think at the end of the day, if I really wake up and I say, you know what, today is going to be a great day. I'm grateful for where I am today, and I don't know where it's going to lead me, then we're good. And how that relates to even how I coach now, and we talked about, is that in life, we're trying to control everything. In basketball, we're trying to control everything. But the real magic happens when we're no longer in control. We allow things to happen, we learn from it, and then we ride those waves and everything else. I told my son this thing in coaching, and I know you probably heard it before, but in life, we're either going into the storm, we're in the storm, or we're leaving the storm. Like that, those are three phases of life. But at the end of the day, if we're grateful for the storm, then all of a sudden you could be anywhere, any place, anytime, and be hopefully the best version of yourself.
I love that. That's such a great way of being able to phrase it. And you share this with athletes. What do you talk to them about then specifically when they do have the storm and they have to manage the storm? Because it's hard sometimes to see gratitude when you're in the middle of the storm.
I try to get them to be their own coach, right? If they see their teammate down or a family member down, what would you say to them? Like, what advice, right? Because we have a tendency to give great advice. We just don't follow our own advice that we give others. And I do it as well, too. But what would you say to yourself? And they're like, Coach, yeah, I tell myself to keep working, but I work all the time, or my time is coming, but I've been waiting for my time for years. Yeah, but that's where the sweet spot is. It's that patience. What are you learning from it? And sometimes you think they're not listening, but they're listening. They're slowly digesting, and maybe later on they'll get it. But I heard this before. It's like, how do you make players happy? You can't, I don't believe you can make players happy. You can make them content. When you make them content, they are in a place where, like, I don't like where I am, but I have the power to change where I am and the power to how I approach things every single day. So what would I tell myself? Like, I have to look in the mirror and say, you know what? I am even in my, so I play in this adult league in Dubai. All right. So I have to walk into the gym. I'm 48 years old. I have to walk in the gym and I have to say to myself, I'm the best shooter in Dubai. This is, and I'm this old. Like, I'm walking in and I'm the best shooter in Dubai. I have to feed myself that. So the same thing with the players. What are you going to feed yourself every single day when everything is going bad? What is, and it happens. And then I equate it to maybe players' favorite movies. I said, in movies, you see it all the time. The hero is faced with the most impossible tasks, and they come out on top because they have a belief and they have a gratitude where they are and how they're going to change it.
And hand in hand with that is something I know you talk about well as well, which is confidence and developing this confidence. And you just alluded to it. What a great story. I wish every athlete in some way would go in there and say, hey, I'm the best shooter in the gym. Whether you are or not is irrelevant, right? That's the point. But it's so hard to get that across. I know to my daughter, to others that I coach, and just say, hey, listen, this is the fixed mindset. You are already this. You are good enough.
The confidence starts with the courage to do something. And I think is that we have normalized, which we should, getting up early, taking your whatever 100,000 shots, eating right, all those things, right? That's what you're supposed to do as an athlete. We're missing the part where we are acknowledging the courage it takes for our young person to go out there and actually execute it. And my daughter played basketball for 15 years. One day she said, Dad, I don't want to do this anymore. I said, great, but you have to do something. So she's in musical theater. And one day she had an audition. And so she drove to the audition place, got out of the car, went to the audition, did the audition, and she came back. And I talked to her and I said, first of all, listen, I want to say I'm so proud of the courage you got to get in the car, right? When players play in an AAU tournament or a game, they're in the car worried about how they're going to play. Now they may say, yo, coach, I'm hyped. I'm ready to go. I've been, But parents are asking questions, coaches are asking questions. No, the courage to get up, to put on your leggings, to put on your shorts, to get out there and to find a way to feel comfortable in front of whether 5 fans or 5,000 fans, that takes courage. And then when you take 5 shots your first game, that's courage. And everyone always tells everybody, no, hey, man, you got to shoot more. You got to shoot more. Okay, kids think, I got to shoot 15 shots now. No, what's the courage to take 5 shots again and maybe 6 shots and maybe 7 shots? What's the courage to go get those rebounds? Like it's those things that ultimately build the confidence over time. Like it doesn't just happen. You don't wake up with the confidence in the world. You actually wake up with 2 fears, or you are born with 2 fears. And now all these things have built up over the time in your life.
So you can see why you are a leadership consultant. But it's phrasing, it's common sense, it's all these things. But again, in application, it's hard, but it's these constant messages that, again, when I was around you, I felt that. There's just constant messaging in different ways. So talk to us about that kind of art of communicating, not saying the same thing, but saying the same thing.
Yeah, it's all about framing. I've spent, in my coaching career, I have been in over 1 million press conferences with myself in the bathroom mirror. It's like, how am I going to say this thing and learn from it? And because it's also like what I believe, right? There's some people like, listen, I just give it to you straight. I don't sugarcoat it. I don't BS. Like, this is what it is. No, I get that. But some people just can't absorb it that way. They just don't see it in that way. So when I do these different conferences, I work with small organizations. It's how are we moving our hands? What is our body language? What is our tone? How are we pausing? What are the things that makes the person be engaged? It's the same thing on social media. If you're on social media, how do you hook someone in? And you hook someone by your voice. You hook someone by giving them the energy and 2 things that people need in their everyday life to succeed. And that's trust and hope. If I show that I trust you or you trust me, then I've got you hooked. Now, if I give you that hope that you'll be a better player, a better person, a better whatever, all of a sudden you're hooked even more. And now I want to learn how to do that, right? So now the hard part again is establish that in our own personal life and how we are going to lead with it. So it takes time, but again, it goes back to that courage. Like you wake up in the morning and you have 25 emails from people you don't want to see on your phone. You either just deny it or you have the courage to go through every single one of them and give it the attention that it deserves.
I love that trust and hope and connecting that. And you saw like before we started practice and after we ended practice, it was get better, got better, to frame it as we're going to get better and we got better. But I've also done the other one, which is I'm glad you brought that up. Be brave. I was brave because especially coaching young athletes, that is such a powerful thing. So talk to us maybe about how you bring that to life in a practice setting, because that is really the trick.
Yeah. So I've changed it over the years, right? My mentors we'd sit there, we do some walking around shooting, and then you sit there, you have your quote of the day, and you're asking questions and everything else. You're not really sure if the players are engaged. Or what I see, teams warm up first, and then they stop warming up, talk for 10 minutes, and then the coaches expect all of a sudden they're going to start practice like right away at 100 miles per hour. No, I think there's different ways to look at it. So the way I would look is, okay, how do I want to start it? How do I want to enter the gym when there's practice? Am I going to come in a serious mood, or am I going to come in high-fiving, bringing the energy right away? Now, why is that important? Is because when I was growing up, so when I was born, my father was 50 years old. So you already know he was upset that he had to take care of a kid at 50 years old, right? So he would walk in the house from work just looking angry. I don't know if he was angry or not, but he just looked like it. And the way he came in was then how I would accept it, and then I would either talk to him or not talk to him. And it affected me for a long time. So does our players. So if we come in smiling, high-fiving. Now, some coaches don't like smiling because they said, you're not taken serious enough. You're not focused. You're not in the zone. And I'm like, guys, kids are different today. They can do a lot of different things all at the same time. So I like to come in with some good energy. Let's just do just a couple things, help them shoot around, grab rebounds, be light with them, talk to them, but make sure they're being active with it. So we'll do that. I get people together. You don't have to be on the line in a circle. I don't know how much that really thing. Just you can't stand behind me. You just can't. I just gotta be able to see everybody. I like to keep everything short and sweet because the longer I talk, the more people aren't going to listen. This is what we're doing. This is how we're going to do it. Everything's going to be dictated on you. I'm excited to practice with you. Let's make it happen. And then from there, we go right into sort of like a game-like thing, whether it's basketball chase. It could be you had what, pound the grass with the basketball, kill the grass, those type of
Sweated a lot doing that one.
yeah. Well, I was the one who wanted to wear a sweater. Kill the grass, like those things, because you are entering already sort of a competition. They're already getting ball movements instead of just basic static stretching. So now their blood is pumping, and now you could gradually build up the energy that goes on in practice. And so it's all the time. I also try to tell, when I was a head coach, I tell my assistants, you have to be opposite of me. You cannot, don't stand next to me and do not share my mannerisms. Okay, as a head coach, I'll probably have my arms crossed and then I put it in my pockets and I have to change my body language. You guys have got to be the one just going all over the place. And then we've got to feed off each other with everything. So we try to build it in that way. We do it at the NBA basketball school. We changed how we start everything. I've done it whether I lead a practice or a clinic the same exact way, just to build that up in them and their energy.
Engagement and enjoyment, they go together, don't they? And leadership. So talk to me first about, we know there's some players that are more comfortable being leaders, say, speaking in practice, whatever it may be, and then there's others that aren't. So maybe let's talk about the second group first. How can we develop leadership? How can we develop more engagement amongst their teammates, amongst yourself, with the players that aren't as comfortable yet in using their voice or using their leadership?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point to dive in. The reason why is because as coaches, we'll say things like, oh, he's just quiet, or the player themselves will just be quiet. And then as a coach, we're challenging them to bring up their voice. A challenge in 2025 is totally different than a challenge in 1994, right? 1994, you're like, oh man, I better be ready to go. 2025, they're like, why don't you just let me be me, coach? Why can't you? We have a guard, very talented guard in NBA basketball school. He's in our 16U team. Very talented, but does not say one word. Doesn't say one word. And so I'll talk to him a little bit, just engage with him a little bit. And I'm also watching how does he lead or how does he perceive himself? All quiet players say the same thing. I just lead by example, coach. That's me. I just lead by example. Okay, I love it. I love it. So over time, how about the courage of just saying one word? Or are you high-fiving? I want to watch how they lead, because the reality is how a person is at their age, 16, 18, 20, 24, 20, 30, they are who they are. Like you learn it in marriage counseling and you learn it in coaching. You are who you are. You can make small adjustments, but how can I help you get the courage to make those adjustments? How can I make you feel more comfortable with your team? Now, for some players, it's super hard to crack. But when you celebrate, and not mockingly, right? Coaches we have tend to mock. If your leader who isn't saying anything says one or two words, please don't be the coach at practice saying, oh, it's so glad that he showed up today and he was loud today. Everybody give a round of applause. That's mocking, right?
I think we're all learning that a lot of these quiet, shy players, first of all, we don't have to tell them that. They know who they are, and I know you reference that many times. But the other part is that a lot of it stems from social anxiety nowadays. And that's a real thing. You think about the things they're dealing with that you and I never had to even think about, the comparative culture, etc. But I love how you phrase this. Showing people the real you will always be undefeated, right? Make them comfortable with themselves, and they're more likely to be comfortable in the roles that you want to put them in, right?
And that is going to take time. There are very few players who come in and they know how to talk. I would argue that the players who talk the most are usually the ones who are like number 10, 11, and 12 at the end of the bench, while all the other ones are just learning how to be themselves. And this is the thing I think we don't quite understand. At 16, 17, 18 years old, the players are trying to find themselves. So are the 20-year-olds. So are the 30-year-olds. So are the 40-year-olds. Everyone is always trying to find a way, trying to find themselves. So I won't say accepting, but knowing that and understanding that allows you to lead in a better way. Now, I've had this discussion with other coaches before. The argument is, are you challenging them enough? Are you holding them accountable enough? But I do believe all that looks different in 2025. And we could complain that the kids are softer. They're not as tough. They didn't walk in the snow at 5 degrees at 5 a.m. and all these great stories that us coaches tell. But we're not asking them to do that. I'm asking you to communicate 2 hours a day if you can. How can you do it your way? I'm asking you to lead and communicate in a 40 to 48-minute game. How can you do that, and how effective were you in it? And you'll get more buy-in that way because, like you said, the player will be like, Coach is doing his best to understand me. And I see it and I hear it. And now I want to meet that person halfway. These are just people skills.
And I know we both know this, we talked about it, but this is what's missing in the youth basketball development space. Like, it's not the technical, it's not the tactical, it's this stuff. And I'm extrapolating from what you've said and what I've read from what you've said, but basically, again, the cliche, coaching isn't just about the game. Okay, absolutely. Great coaching is about building people up. Absolutely. You say that, I say that, we all agree. But here's where the beauty comes through from what you've said here and what I've read you've said and what you said to me there. How do you do that? You give them hope each day. Man, like, to me, if you can, as a coach, can give them hope each day, that's perfect. And I'm so grateful you said that and you say it that way.
Yeah, you have to give them hope. I think one thing I'd encourage all coaches, record yourself coaching, record your voice, record what you say and how you say it. The first time I did it, I was like, oh, I sound horrible, number one. Number two, I'm like, did I say that? We forget what we say in practice in the heat of passion, right? We are forgetting what we say. But now when you record it, you're like, oh my gosh, I really did say that. I could see how that could be taken this way. Now, you're not changing because I guess what the old saying used to be, the inmates run the asylum. No one's an inmate and no one's in an asylum, but I'm just saying that's what the old saying was. Like, what you're doing is you're reading the room. You're aware of what's going on. And now, as you mentioned, how can I give them hope? How can I trust them? But then also, what's my tone? How can I say it in a way that resonates with them and really pulls out the best, not out of fear, but because you're like, you know what? This guy, I could rock with him or her.
You're well suited to talk about a lot of these topics. Again, the diversity of your experiences, not just, and I say that about my experiences too. We've been fortunate. We've coached kids all around the world at variable ages, from professional on down to the youngest players. And that really does help shape your understanding of the experience they're having and then how we can help them. Let's focus on the elite players. You've been around a lot of elite players first. What are some things that stood out to you about elite players and the things that you can do to help them at that level?
They all want to be better. They all want to be better. They all have a huge sense of who they are until you break it down even further. They will always come across that they're the best player in the world. And they will always come across like, how are you going to help me? And, for me, I'm 5'11" on a good day. I don't look like I'm a basketball coach. But I'm going to come in. I'm going to try and help you. I'm going to try and relate with you. I'm going to try and help you, whether it's film or my understanding of who you are. We're lucky to have Avery Bradley when I was with the Maine Red Claws, Maine Celtics years ago. He had a 12-year NBA career. And this, I don't want to say kid at the time, but he wanted to come in and get better. His first question, like, all right, coach. Actually, they didn't call me coach. Hernando, what do I need to do? I'm like, all right, we got this. Can you score in this way? Can you make a difference in this way? That was a big part. The other part too, when you are coaching and working with high-level players, they will always question you. They're always going to question you. And how you react to that is huge. If you come in saying, I don't know why you're questioning me, I'm the coach, you need to respect me, you're gone. You will not have a job. But if you could say things like, hey, I understand what you're saying, so let's adjust this and this. When I'd go to Celtics practice, oh boy, I think his name was Mike Lombardi. Was it Mike Lombardi? Coach Lombardi, right? He was the assistant coach. And he's 5'8", 5'9", knows his stuff. He's tough. He knows what he could do.
Mike Longobardi, yeah.
Longobardi, yes, thank you. And that's when Kevin Garnett was there, and they were talking about pick and roll coverage. I think they've had a story about this. I was there, and there he was. Kevin was questioning every little thing, and there was Mike, cool as ice. He's when we watched the film, what this showed us, when they did this against the 76ers, they did this, and Kevin was like, all right, because then Again, that's that whole trust. I trust Mike to know the scouting report, right? So now all of a sudden I trust him and now I'm hooked. I'm like, all right, that's my guy. I'm going to go do that. But it's like that in every country. When I coach in Japan, when I coach in New Zealand, even with my players in Dubai. And I'm no longer on the floor as much. But when you show them and they know that you know what they could do on the floor, they will be so attentive to you.
Great story. Mike's a big fan of the podcast and a great supporter of us. And I love that story. Just that connection to, look, I did my work. I'm confident, right? And that's what we want players to act like too. I guess coming back to a little bit of the leadership piece, because obviously culture and all these buzzwords exist and it's all part of it. But you've been in situations like you referenced New Zealand or the pro season in Japan, where you have to put together a team and bring it together so quickly. What has that taught you about your ability to be able to put together a team, and advice we can give coaches about your ability to put together a team?
Yeah, those were two different experiences. And so I learned so much. I went to Japan. I was a young head coach, and I got fired after a year. We were horrible. At the time, I was like, oh, we got these great sets. We're going to run this. We're going to run this. But it wasn't great at all. I was communicating with my players. I had a translator. So I had to learn, instead of talking really long, I had to give them 3 points in halftime and still all those things to get them to understand what we were trying to do. And at the time, I don't think I really, no, not that I don't think, I knew I did not know what leadership took at that level. I was more of a screamer. I was more like, what are you doing? I'm trying to get them in that way. And that's just not, and I didn't understand the Japanese culture as well, too, which is important because at the time my whole team was rookies, but we had two veterans. My rookies were better than the veterans. But because of the cultural divide, my rookies could not outshine the veterans. And I don't understand this. I'm like, we got to compete. But at the time, they just weren't there yet. So my leadership there was horrendous. I openly joke around that we lost so many games and I gained 30 pounds eating ice cream every day because I couldn't figure things out. Then fast forward 10 or 12 years later, I was at New Zealand, the head coach of the junior national team. And now I felt, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get on a bunch of Zoom calls every other week. We're going to all come together because by that, I was like 9,000, 10,000 miles away from them. How am I going to build a culture? So what I did a deep dive on the Maori culture. I did a deep dive on who my coaches were, where they come from, what different parts of New Zealand, what do they believe, what are some Maori keywords, what are the beliefs, I've seen the haka, but what does the haka actually mean beside it looking really cool, right? So then I was able to really get a better connection with the team. And we had our mission, we had what we want to do and move forward with it. But I realized that if I was that coach in Japan, we could have done really well. But if I didn't have that experience as a bad coach in Japan and bad leadership skills, then I wouldn't be where I was with the New Zealand team. And so those were huge. It's what you always talk about, like noticing what was going on and then where we end up. And then knowing now with New Zealand or whatever coaching jobs I had since then, is that building that culture. Now, we'll say people love culture does not mean you win games. I love it when it says culture wins. Listen, there are a lot of bad culture teams that have won at the highest level, right? There just has been. But culture is just a part of it. It's just the fabric of your team. And I love it when it used to be like when a visiting coach comes to your gym, they should know the culture you have. They should know what you run. They should know what you believe in. And I just never bought into it because our culture is not for the show. Our culture is what we believe in every single day. And how are we going to get there? And how am I going to constantly reiterate, sell it, and push it forward for the team to accept it?
I love it. Thanks for sharing that introspection. And going to this UAE experience where you referenced having all these expats, different people from different places. I think it was a Scottish girl that I could such a great accent, but I couldn't always understand her, for example. And then she's talking to this other girl from this country. And it's just a beautiful thing to be a part of. But talk to us about, again, how do you bring them all together to feel like this common bond?
So for that trip, the players who went on the trip, we had 9 players. They have their own WhatsApp group chat. For them, they grew a really strong bond. Number one, they got a chance to get to know each other. They got a chance to get to know me because the way I run the NBA basketball school, I oversee everything. I don't spend a lot of time on the court with them every day. I believe in empowering our quality, amazing coaches that we have. They got to do that. But when you have different thought patterns in basketball, for example, I'll get emails from parents, or parents will come on saying that we're just not tough enough on the kids, right? We just don't yell enough. So I get there's that part. Then I have the other faction where it's like, oh, I think you're just how you say things, it's your delivery. Okay, there's that. Oh, and then there's all these different views and opinions. And when I got there, I'm trying to appease it. I'm going to have conversation with every single person. But ultimately, you got to have a line in the sand like, hey, guys, this is what we're doing. This is what we believe in. This is the direction we're going in. Taking over NBA basketball school UE was just like taking over a college program. You're going to have believers and non-believers. You have people are going to question about everything, and that's okay, right? That's okay. I have to be okay with it. And I wasn't for a little bit, but then after a while, like, you know what? No, I've been through this before, right? It was my ego talking was what it was. It was like, no, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to move forward. And then we go from there. So I'll have a Madison, who's a Scottish player. Then I have a Lebanese player. I have a Syrian player. I have an Israeli. I have, Russians, Ukraine, everybody, because they all think differently. But in order to bring them together, what is the commonality? The commonality is to come here today and let's get better. How are we going to get better? We're getting better because of this and this. Look what you did today. Okay. That's the one part of it. And then through the process, teaching them how to communicate that with their parents, teach them how to communicate with them, and for them to see how they have improved just in that one training section. And then now, how do I, as a young person, share that with my parents or my teachers or whoever else? So it is challenges from time to time. But again, if we focus just on us and what we're doing today, they believe it. And the kids who believe it will be with you because they want to be in your program.
So this is a great, I guess, way to be able to go into this area where, let's say you were a traditional coach and then you've gone to more game-based, and you've done that for a while now. But talk to us about that, because there's all these survivorship biases. You reference parents, like, this isn't what it looked like when I played. And you're trying to say your phone doesn't look like what you had when you were 30 years ago either. It just doesn't make sense that we hang on to some of these things. But anyways, you went through this process. Let's focus on your process. What were some of the challenges? And then what are still some of the challenges in trying to convey this to other people as they watch it?
I think number one of the challenges we're having even now is just the level of intensity in our training sessions, right? If they believe that if their kid doesn't leave the practice tired, full of sweat, that they didn't work hard enough. And I explain to them that we have different percentages each day. Like today could be 100%. To this day could be 50% because we are showing different things that they have to do. So there's definitely that part of it, the challenge. The other part,
interject to that too. Ask that parent, if any coach deals with that question, ask them, okay, so did you measure their cognitive effort? Yeah, did you measure their cognitive effort? Because again, I know your praxis. There's a ton of cognitive effort if it's not physical effort.
Yeah, no, I love that. Let me hold on. I'm writing this down. Cognitive effort, because I need, no, this is good, because you're always trying to find ways to share and explain to the kids.
Yeah, like we measure practice based on how hard they worked. That's just a physical exertion. That's not what did they learn? What did they take away? How many decisions did they make? How many problems did they solve? There's all these evaluations that somebody who's just inherently biased by, we got to play harder. Sure, we got to play harder. But
there's definitely that. The other part is, and we discussed this in Paris, is the training techniques as well too. Right? If we're not all lined up in 5 beautiful lines, everybody straight and everybody dribbling with the right hand and then crossover, all with a whistle as a cue, then they're not learning anything. Whereas teaching them that chaos is, at least in my opinion, the way to go on how to teach and how for them to think the game, to see the game and understand the game. That has been a challenge as well too, because if we're not having 2 cones and then you dribble, and then you cross over and then you spin move at the cone, they're like, what skills are they really learning? And sharing them how it is and for them to see it is the pushback. It's the pushback because they think it's just like in school. And I think a lot of people do, right? Like, number one, what's my ROI? What's my return on investment? All right, so if I'm doing this, then I need to be able to dribble this amount of times. When you could dribble, I've seen a lot of great ball handlers with no defense. When the defense comes in, listen, I'm a whiz with my left hand with no defense. I'm amazing. Listen, you put a defense on me, even at 48 years old, I struggle a little bit. I struggle. So those would be like the two biggest challenges. And then over time, there is still a big part. And as much as so many parents and people say, and even kids say, I'm not worried about winning. Winning isn't a priority. And I say that openly because we're in a learning phase of where we are as an athlete. But at the end of the day, I'll always get, coach, it would be nice to win. No, listen. I'm
not saying we don't want to win. That's a
right. But what are we learning? Where are we going? Where the place that we want to see? So I think there's that. It's definitely different than when I was growing up. Now people want to see a plan because they want to keep everything nice and tidy and comfortable. And I'm pushing back on that, and we'll get there.
I love this. And look, coaches, brilliant conversation so far. This is the dessert. I am so fascinated by this conversation. I can't wait to have more conversations with you like this. And I have some inherent biases we'll bring up in a second. But first, tell us about game-changing films, working on major projects like Coach Carter, Swagger, Crossover. Talk to us about this. What do you do? Not how did you get into it, but what do you actually do when you help choreograph and help these movies come to life?
Yeah, it'll be a production where they have sports action. I start off strictly in basketball. I do other sports now, but I strictly do basketball. I start in basketball where really it's a script or it's on a storyboard or it's a vision. Now, how do we bridge the gap in order to make it, yes, look reality, but there's another part of reality that I think people forget. The production world are usually filled with people who were artists. They were arts. They were not picked first in kickball. The athletes that come in were picked first in kickball and at times made fun of the artist. There's a miscommunication on how to do it. For us, it'll say that Chris shoots a three-pointer at the wing. We're like, oh, that's easy. Catch the ball, shoot the wing. In their mind, the artist's mind, oh, I need this person to move here and they have to move in this way. But getting the artist to explain that to an athlete, sometimes there's a little bit of miscommunication and it's tough to have someone just do all of it. So we come in and we coordinate the sports. We train the actors. We choreograph based on the script and the story points, which is really important. And then the other part is to think about what the viewer is going to want to see. There's great players who have great ball handling, but if the viewer doesn't know what a great ball handler look like, then good moves are going to be able to just transfer and they're like, oh, that's a really good move. The other part, we help production save money because we're not taking 10 or 12 days to shoot a sports action. So it's really from the beginning, from casting to training to coordinating to choreography to script changing, script reading, changing. How would a person be a coach? I was coaching at Duke at the time, but Ben Affleck was a coach on a movie, the way back. And I came in just to talk to him. They wanted him to play basketball. He was not interested in playing basketball. He would talk to me for 2 to 3 hours just on coaching. How would a coach stand? What could they say? Would I really say this? Would I not really say this? What would I really wear? Because when you look at almost every production, if you're a coach, they give you a hat, they give you a whistle, a clipboard, and a shirt that says coach. Huge, or right here, right? No.
I've never worn a shirt that says coach.
There's going to be a show coming out later on this year, and they casted me as a coach. So it was great. There was like a game. So they're dressing me. They have everything in there. And before they yell action, they give you all your little props. So like, all right, coach, here's your pencil. Here's your clipboard. Here's your whistle. I'm like, oh, no, I'm not using any of that. I'm not wearing a whistle during the game. I don't have my clipboard during the game. They're like, oh, okay, good. But yeah, there's all these things that people think of what it looks like. We come in and hopefully change that.
Okay, so let's go here. First of all, I sometimes will not watch basketball movies because I really think that they don't portray coaching the way it actually is. Like it's just, I call it the Hollywoodization of coaching. Oh, and this is perpetuating this stereotype of what coaching is. Oh, it's just a big speech and then run them and punish them and dribble through tires. And now all of a sudden you got a great team. And we know that's not it. Now, I am grateful because the movies you've worked on and the shows you've worked on are actually ones that I've enjoyed the
Yes.
basketball part. But I'm guessing that's because, again, you are a coach and there's some authenticity to it. Swagger, for example, that could have gone to really just glorification of, oh, the big shot and the big thing and the big, but it really got into the kind of the heart and the struggle of even being a great player. So I really appreciated that part of it. But maybe going back to my original point, do you understand what I'm saying about sometimes these shows and these, even the reality shows kind of portray coaching in a really poor light that now parents and players think that's what coaching is. And it's really not. It's not that exciting, right? Coaching
No,
is not that exciting.
you are absolutely right. And you see it even on ESPN broadcasts, is that for a college game, it'll be like Coach K versus Roy Williams.
Oh,
And it's not Duke versus UNC. And then you go to an NBA game, you don't see Coach Pop versus Rambis, Kurt Rambis, right? No, you'll see the Lakers versus whoever. And I understand the marketing aspect of it. But the reality is, I do think there's such a huge emphasis on coaching that it is glorified way too much. Yes, we pull our part. We do what we have to do. Our job is to prepare them as best as possible as we can. But just like in any situation, it's the people who perform that has got to perform. And the same thing on acting, the same thing in the game. So I do believe over in society, right? Like we could take it, Gino Auriemma at Connecticut, tremendous coach. To be that good for that long amount of time, that is a skill in itself that he's had to do over time. But the other part is the big one is Hurley, right? Over at Connecticut, right? And now what's happening is that he was praised so much, and now all of a sudden he's not praised as much. Now people are thinking that he's just immortal. No, not immortal. He's mortal, but he's the same guy. He didn't change. Maybe he has one better player. Maybe he had one bat more call on a sideline out of bounds. There's so many different factors with it, but it is so important to understand that the coaches play the role by pulling the best out of their players. Period. That's what a coach does, a director does, the president, a prime minister, all that. We're trying to pull the best out of who we have.
and do you feel like working on these projects, is it something that, is there an open-mindedness to be able to make it more authentic and real? Or is it just, again, we've got to make it the biggest scene possible because obviously people want to watch it?
Working on films has made me improve my negotiation skills, but also an understanding, right? Because I have worked with some people, sometimes on these projects, I bring someone along who's very good at the skill acquisition part. So the very first thing they would say, that would never happen.
Mm.
Again, it's how you approach it. You can't say that will never happen because there is a universe where it could possibly happen. But we also have to approach, say, okay, so if a director will say, oh, Hernando, what if we have this? Can this person do this? It can, but I don't know if they're going to be doing a 360-degree dunk with time and score, a tie game against 5 people. But I said, but we could do this and this. And I learned that a lot working for Coach Joanne P. McCauley at Duke. Is more like whoever's in charge will always ask for the world. It is my job to say, we're going to get close to the world based on where we are, based on the reality of stuff, and also based on what that athlete can do at that time. So where there's a little gentle push and pull, ultimately, a lot of directors like, hey, whatever they say works, let's just do it and then go from there.
Great advice. Great advice for assistant coaches or people, anyone that works with somebody who's technically their boss. That's just awesome stuff. Talk to us about the player aspect of it. Generally, again, I think this has been a big improvement in sports films in general, is that they seem to get former players and people that actually look a little bit more authentic. But sometimes you can't because the star is not a former basketball player, for example. So what are some things that you guys do to make it look more realistic?
We like to try and get as many real basketball players as we can. The great thing about Hollywood is that everybody believes they're a former athlete. Did you play soccer, football, basketball? Oh, no, yeah, I played all of it. And then they show up, you're like, oh my gosh. Okay, no problem. This is who we have. Let's adjust from it. So we got to take a look at the script and what are the key shots, key things this person is going to do. Now let's work on that. You don't have to become a great all-around player. You have to, what can you do so that we can get you the best possible version of it you can. Now on a show like Swagger, we had a good amount of real good basketball players. So now we could push the envelope with what we can do.
It looked like it. It was noticeable. Yeah.
No, they were good. They were good, and we had a great camera person and just overall vision. I worked on another show called The Crossover, where there were kids, and we had to cheat it a little bit. So when I say cheated, is that if the script says 3-point line, maybe it's a mid range. We also always hire a basketball double, someone who looks like them from behind, maybe the arms, whatever else it is. But we don't want to make it so different, right? I've had shows where it's like a 15-year-old and their crossover is a little slow, and then we hire a double and their crossover is like super fast. And we got to dial it down a little bit. So that's where we're looking at. There's sometimes directors want to dunk, and I don't really believe in lowering the rim because you could tell if it's lowering the rim. So we like to go ahead and keep the rim where it is, but now let's hire someone who could actually do it. We did it on the last show right now on Netflix called Running Point. We had to go ahead and get a dunker, and he was great.
Does Kate Hudson dunk in it?
She wanted to, for sure.
I'm sure.
She wanted to, for sure. But no, yeah, that's pretty much how we do to bring some more realism to it.
I love it. I love diving into this a little bit. It's a fascinating part of kind of your career trajectory that, again, sure, at the beginning of it, it wasn't planned, but all of a sudden, look at where you are. Look at what you're doing. It's pretty cool, and it's a wonderful part. As we wrap up, talk to us a little bit about just being open. We referenced some of these things that you've ended up doing. It's pretty cool when you look back at it, and talk to us about how you prepare yourself or how someone could prepare themselves to be open to these possibilities.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the chaos part, being open to it, being open to the uncomfortability. I also think the fluidity of life. So there's so many different things. I've done a lot of really amazing things. I've been part of so many things. But the other part people don't see is that I was divorced 10 years ago. My kids lived without me for a while because I was on the other side of the country. I'd missed moments. I missed family time. I missed so many different things. And I'm not going to call it that's the sacrifice. I call it more the fluidity. It's the understanding that in order for me to take care of my family, to take care of what could be in the future, is I have to do things that has to be based on me and take chances. I think that as coaches, we tell our players to take chances. We tell our players, do this, do that, do this. But we have to do that as well too, right? That we have to be prepared. Now, of course, as we get older, where are you financially? Where are you living wise? Like all that stuff, totally get it. Totally get it. But if you're in a situation where you could actually take a chance, take an opportunity, you don't know where that's going to lead you down the line. When I got the job with the Maine Celtics, Austin Ainge is the head coach. He's the assistant GM of the Celtics. I had called him and he said, no, I already filled the job. I called him 2 weeks later just to catch up. And he says, oh, hey, you know what? The guy didn't take the job. Do you want the job? Now,
that's awesome.
The point of the story is that I've never been the first choice of anybody. Maybe NBA basketball school Dubai, but I haven't been the first, and that's okay. Like you get to where you get, but only because if you have someone who wants to go rebound for you, you have no idea who's going to be in the gym. We tell that to our players. Hey, you don't know who's going to be in the gym, so you better work hard. Well, why don't we take those chances? And the last point with the fluidity part is that my kids get to see their family member, their dad, do something. I'm no longer just someone saying, hey, you could do it because I believe in you. Because after a while, your kids are like, hey, Dad, you're supposed to say that. You're supposed to believe in me. But now they're like, oh my gosh, look what my dad is doing. Look what my mom is doing. Look, then all of a sudden they believe it. So take a chance on yourself, man. Take a chance. Get out there. Yeah, people talk about networking. No, build relationships. Call people. Hey, how you doing? That's great. And then all of a sudden, you're in the conversations without you even trying to be in the conversations. And that in itself is just a huge honor.
Great advice. Appreciate that and appreciate everything you've shared with us. And thank you for sharing the game.
Chris, you're amazing, man. Thank you for having me. As I saw you in Paris, I've seen you for years. Your work is unbelievable. I love everything you're doing. It is what basketball should be. It is the direction of basketball, and I'm glad that's why you're involved with NBA and doing a lot of different things with us all together. Man, thanks again for having me here. It's a huge honor.
Thank you for helping me spread it, and grateful for you and everyone else. So we'll continue to share the game. Thanks, Coach.